So let's jump right in. Helps if I change the slide for y'all to see. So I'm Alana. I'm your host and meetup organizer. I run JSON-LD for SEO app and I work with e-commerce shops to remove friction from the buying process. And my main focus is really on rescuing Shopify websites, making them more effective in attracting more visitors, providing better SEO, and increasing conversion rates, all at a fraction of the cost of a full redesign. This is a quick look at our agenda today. I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions either throughout the session or after, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But this is being recorded, and assuming everything works, which there has been times where it has not, so assuming it works, I will be sharing the video in the next day or so. So if you have questions as we go along, just put them in the chat. You can either use the Q&A or in the actual chat box, and we'll be able to ask Kurt them as we go or at the end if we need to. I do have a few events that are in mind that are coming up, but they're not on the calendar yet. So if there is an event that or a topic that you want us to explore, let me know in the feedback request that you're going to get along with the recording. The feedback request also really helps me to know what's working well or not, so that I can continue to provide a valuable resource to you. So don't be shy. I promise I'm not going to be offended. Neither will Kurt. He's got thick skin. We'll be good. If you love it, tell us. If you hate it, tell us. If you have ideas, let us know that as well. Quick shout out to our sponsor, JSON-LD for SEO, which transforms your SEO with rich results. It's a program that allows you to show search enhancements such as review stars, price, availability, and so on, because there's other different types of rich results that you can use. All in search results for Google Search, Bing, Pinterest, and other search engines. The app also provides all the structured data that you need for Merchant Center. So you can install JSON-LD for SEO today to instantly add advanced SEO features to your store. I'm going to go ahead and share the link in the chat so that you have it if you're curious. Now, without further ado, because again, I really want to make sure we get to this topic and we have plenty of time for your questions, I want to go ahead and introduce my very good friend, Kurt, who is going to share his 7 split testing discoveries that defied assumptions. So Kurt, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. My pleasure. And you brought up your app, JSON-LD. We use that in several stores successfully. It works as advertised.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for not calling me a liar. I appreciate it.
You know, I would have just been like, I've not heard of it. Not familiar. Shall I share my screen?
Yeah, go
and
for
get
it.
started. All right. Share. There we go. All right. So as a little placeholder, I had this meme I made. I was very proud of it. Quite dated at this point. And the fact that like even I have Drake on here. Drake. Okay, here we go. I love split testing, and I want you to love it too, because I used to be intimidated by it. I think people, as a active gatekeeping, statisticians excel in this space and try to keep people out for fear of like, well, you'll set up your test wrong and you know it won't be statistically significant. And my answer to that is, who cares? I want you to play with it. I want you to engage in split testing in all its forms. And when you know it's not statistically significant, take it as a grain of salt. But the fact that you are out there playing with it, you will enter a new mindset in which you challenge your assumptions. And that's what I wanted to do for myself. And so it was 2022, January. My New Year's resolution was, I'm going to get good at split testing. It was like during the pandemic, I started playing with it and I was hooked, right? Because split testing, you know, you're no longer guessing at, does this have an effect or not? You know, at least in theory, you know, you have a suggestion. The tests don't always work. And that's kind of fun too, because then your answer to what impact does this have is, it kind of doesn't matter. And that's fine too. And so why are we listening to me? Alana introduced me, but I've been a Shopify partner for 10 years now. And I work exclusively at Shopify stores. Like, this is my thing. All I do is e-commerce for my entire adult life. And I've got an e-commerce podcast, unofficial Shopify podcast, that's got 2 million downloads. So I have, you know, by hitching my cart to the right horse at the right time, there's certainly some luck in there. I have, I've become an authority, an expert in the space through experience. And I'm going to talk to you about split testing. And I mentioned, like statisticians want to keep people out. I went to college. I got a C in quantitative analysis, and see, I didn't even get the name right. Quant. I got a C in quantitative analysis. So I'm not exactly an expert on statistics, and I didn't let that stop me. The tools do the calculations now. There's calculators. We plug the stuff in. And we've got some interesting clients where we've run some of these tests in, like Ezra Firestone's Overtone, Hoonigan, one of my pet favorite brands, Hardy and Sons tea. They sell that in Target. I'm drinking it now. And of course, Jay Leno's Garage. And when I got that site, that's what people went, oh, this guy's serious. It shouldn't have taken a celebrity for people to listen, but it certainly helps. And I'm not stupid. I'm going to take advantage of that. But we have to establish some ground rules, because when I started talking online, we're talking about Twitter, but you see it around on social media. When you start talking about split tests or results, if the Muppets will come out of the woodwork, and you have those people who will turn to you and go,
well, is that statistically significant?
And sometimes it is, but like, how would they even know? It would be so easy to just go, yeah, it is. Moving on. Like, sure, why not? If it makes you feel better. And so even if it was or wasn't, it doesn't matter, because a test on my site for my audience with my brand, even if it has total perfect significance by some matter of amazing confluence, those results will not apply directly to your store, your brand, your client, whatever. And so you still have to run that test yourself. So asking, is it statistically significant about someone else's results? It doesn't matter, right? Just use that, take it with a grain of salt, use it to inform your results. And so within the e-commerce space, we have Baymard Institute, right? And were we in person, I'd say, oh, raise your hands if you read Baymard, like the whole room. Oh, we love Baymard. Oh, we go nuts for Baymard. Because Baymard takes the ambiguity out of it. They say, hey, we looked at 2,000 websites and we averaged it, and this is best practice. It's not necessarily best practice, they're telling you. They're saying this is most typical, this is most average. They're going toward the mean. And I like it, but we shouldn't view it as like, this is, these are the 10 commandments according to Baymard, and you have to follow it, and that's that. It isn't the case. The other thing I think people overlook with split testing is just wildly ignoring audience. So considering segmentation. And in our space, that's going to be new versus returning customers, and of course, mobile versus desktop. Those are different intents and different ways to shop and browse, or you could expand split testing to beyond just e-commerce. But like think about mobile versus desktop. Mobile, I'm sitting on the couch. I've got the TVs going in the background, because like no one can watch just one screen. I need at least two. And so like TV's going, a thought pops into my ADHD addled head, and then I start Googling it, and I end up on an e-commerce site, and then I, get distracted again by the other screen, and I bounce and I leave. So like mobile versus desktop, very different. Whereas desktop, I'm like at work in my cubicle, just like cruising, trying to shop, not get caught. Because most people, they work about 40% of the time, and the rest of the time they're just screwing around. And so I would encourage you to consider segmentation, but at the same time, look at an e-commerce store. If you said your site's 70% mobile, I would consider that to be extremely low. 80% is more typical. If site skews younger, it's going to be more like 90%, but we're professionals. We're web professionals. So we're probably always on our desktops. And when we're looking at client sites, we'll commit that crime. We'll look at their site on desktop too. When we're 1 out of 10, and the other 9 out of 10 are on their phones. So that's a New Year's. Well, let's make it a Memorial Day resolution, right? Let's look at the sites on our phones more often. It's important. And finally, use the tools you like. In my case, I dearly love Google Optimize. Unfortunately, Google is killing it, like they kill many products that I love, September 30th. And I don't care. I'm going to keep using it till then. They're going to have to pry that from my fingers. So I will use it all the way to the scene of the crash. And then I will finally be forced to move on to something else. But I did all these tests with Google Optimize. I'm running Google Optimize tests now, and I will continue to do so for the next several months while I can. But that's me. Whatever tools you like are the tools you should use. And so let's get into looking at some tests. I'm going to explain the test to you. I'm going to give you the results. And I want you to use that as inspiration for things you should test yourself on your own site or client sites. And so this was one of the first ones that really surprised me and really illustrated some of the issues with like looking at other people's split tests. And it's should price appear on collection pages. Collection page, Shopify calls a category page in e-commerce. And this screenshot is from Etsy. If I've got my collection of products and they've got, it goes, it's like photo, title, reviews, maybe it's got sizes, availability, badges, but should it include the price? Of course, the answer is, well, maybe. It depends. So in one store we ran this, it increased revenue per session by 23%. And it was statistically significant. But in other stores, it did not have the same result. In another store, it had the same result. So what I think is going on here with this test is it can be quite beneficial if you have the right audience and product market fit. So when I look at that collection page, I'm looking at, and I'm about to click through to the product. If the price is not on there, no matter what, my lizard brain is going to make an estimate of value. Only that value is going to be like perceived value. What it's worth to me gets wrapped up in there when I'm presented with all information absent of the price. When I land on the product page and I see the price for the first time, or you can do the same thing with like add to cart to see price. When I see that price for the first time, I think what happens here is if it's lower than what I expected, immediately I'm like, that is a good deal. And I'm much more inclined to buy. If it is higher than I expected, I'm like, ooh, ouch. If it's a little higher, fine. If it's way higher, that is going to have a negative effect. So depending, where that subjective price lands, I think is what determines this test. And it's such a great example of this is a great test with big potential gains, but there absolutely is no best practice here, right? This is going to hurt some sites for sure and benefit others. And then on others, it won't matter at all. And that's why I love using split testing to figure this stuff out, because otherwise there's no way to know. How important is font size? I ran this test recently on a site and it made no difference. It didn't. But on other sites, it has. Like, that's one of the easier things to do to conversion rate optimize a site is make it easier to read, right? I don't think we should need to split test to agree that if a site is hard to read, it will not perform as well as a site that is easy to read. And if you look at like any traditional publishing, if you recall a magazine printed on dead trees, these are like rare antiques now. In it, they have these really narrow columns. It'll be like 4 or 5 words in a column for a magazine or newspaper. That's because it makes it very easy to read for humans. And so that's the readability guidelines that are recommended are based off character length. And so you want to adjust to have 60 to 80 characters on the line. I think even that's too wide, but that's the supposed best practice. And you want to have a good line height. So the space between it, and that should make it easy to read. So like narrower columns, double space it. And if you want to get fancy, you could try messing with like word, letter, and paragraph spacing. Now, these are starting points. I have never gone with exactly this, like as a designer, I want to fiddle, eyeballing it. I want to change it a little bit, but focusing on readability, on typography can actually have a huge benefit. Think about it. The web is 90% text, right? I mean, everything is like interspersed with multimedia, but it's mostly text on web pages. Now, how about when you're on a category page or collection page? Should it have a big image at the top? Should it have a banner? Should it have a hero image? A really glorious, beautiful, mouth-watering lifestyle image, action shot, maybe a video and some text. This one we have found, no matter how glorious that image is, oh, I want it to work. It doesn't at all. It's just a thing for your customers to scroll past. They don't care. They do not care about that image because that is not the intent of the page. By the time they have gotten to a category or product page, they're in shopping mode. Now they're shopping. Oh my gosh. And so that increased scroll depth, meaning the thing at the top of the collection page is just an annoyance for me to scroll past. That's going to cost you conversions, right? And especially on a collection page where it's like I'm going collection product, then back to collection. I got to scroll past this thing potentially multiple times. It's quite frustrating. And if I jump between collections with images, I got to keep scrolling. So I hate to acknowledge that the fold may even exist, but if you get the important piece of the content that the person is interested in closer to the top of the page, their life becomes easier. And so that's what's going on here with this collection page versus like the banner, all that content above the collection just exists to push the product down, the important part. Well, no wonder. But this did increase revenue per session by getting rid of it. So sometimes less is more, simpler is better. How about shipping costs? Usually you could split test shipping costs. It's not the easiest thing to do. You need Shopify Plus. At least last I checked, you did. But it's less important than it used to be. Like free shipping used to be table stakes. I don't think it is anymore. And so using, there's a few apps that'll do it. This one, I think I used IntelliGems. And you could figure out checkout conversion rate. And so we had like no free shipping at 25, free shipping at 75. And you could see, all right, free shipping at 25, understandably, that performs the best. But they really don't, the differences here are not that big. They're not that huge. And so given how expensive shipping can be, it may be worthwhile to test this and like try and figure out where the ideal point is. And this is dependent on like what your shipping costs are, what your profit is, what your cost of goods sold is, what your average order value is. You know, I really think discount, like that average order value should always be used as the price floor for free shipping, should be used as the price floor for discounts, free gift with purchase. That's the starting point. Like if you know that's where people are willing to buy, why give up more profit to that? For the people who want to spend more with you, reward those people. And yeah, if we assume some fulfillment costs here, like in this example, $7.50 per order is the real fulfillment cost at the time of the test for this brand. And so with no free shipping, that's when they actually had the most profit, with given their average order value and their mix. And 25 obviously was the worst, but that had the highest conversion. So the highest converting one was the lowest profit. That's the one, that's going to kill them the quickest if things go wrong. And 75, all right, that's pretty good. But no free shipping, that seemed to be the winner here. But it's so you can't just apply this to every single store and go, well, it's best practice. It's not. You got to test it and figure it out. And so I think free shipping is not a must-have anymore, but it is a must-test. And IntelliGems is the one I used. Ship Scout, I've used that as well. It works. They both work. I'm sure there's others now. And but they both require Shopify Plus to do these split testing changes. And so if you're on the non-plus plans they call Shopify Core, you could do this. It's not statistically significant, but you could compare week-to-week changes and try and work it out that way. And you get a sense of it.
Can I ask a quick question? Do you mind?
Sure,
Sorry. So
please.
on the free shipping, do you know, or do you recall if they had like something in the announcement bar that talked about what the cost of free shipping or the cost of shipping was? Like, was it apparent that there was an associated fee around it, or was it like hidden?
This is an excellent question. So what these apps do is they're like, they're swapping out the shipping, they're taking over at the checkout, but they decide who's in what test as soon as they land on the site, and it changes the announcement bar accordingly. So each person when they landed on the site would have known either like we're not offering free shipping, or it's set at 75 or it's at 25.
Okay, so so that's what the consistency was that top announcement bar. It would have been up there. Okay, got it. Perfect,
yeah, it has
thanks.
it there, and then it has it in, and then obviously at checkout.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. I love to declutter websites. I do. I just look for elements that I can rip out. I want to remove. And recently viewed items was one that I used to just be like, oh, that could go. Often it's included in sites, and so I try and rip it out. And so I tested this thing, and I couldn't get consistent results. And so this is where I started playing with segmentation. And that's where we found when we had the recently viewed items and new visitors were on the site, it had a negative effect. It was detrimental because they were new to the site. The recently viewed items was meaningless to them. And when it did show them anything, it was like the 2 items they'd looked at that day. So for them, it was just taking up space, and it had a negative effect because it's just busy. I want to get rid of it. But a returning visitor, whoa, they're like, oh yeah, that's the thing I was looking at. Well, there it had this outsized impact on them. It's very effective. And so sometimes the split test may teach you, most split tests are going to be like, all right, which is the better version, A or B? Do I hide this element? Do I show this element? Do I use this layout or this layout? Some of them you can use to inform personalization. And so what we did here, and Google Optimize supports this, and again, I got to find a new solution. If someone is new to the site, then we hide that recently viewed section for them. It's on the page, it's always there. But if they're new, we just hide it because we know it's meaningless to them and therefore a distraction. But if they're a returning visitor, we don't do anything, they get to see it. And so real win there. How about those quick add buy buttons where I'm like on a collection or category page and I can just add to cart? Are those good, bad? Do we need them? It's like shortcutting a step. It's making life easy. It seems like they should be positive. And of course it depends, right? Because you're circumventing a product page. If you have a complex product, maybe you need the info that's in that product page. And in some cases, like apparel, it could just be sizing info is the thing they're after, or reviews, and it's just easier to look at it on the product page. Or for whatever reason, that experience leads them to add to cart more. Versus if you have, an inexpensive product like body jewelry, or like, straight up hardware, nuts and bolts, stuff that costs $1 a pop. And then a quick add to cart would probably work really well for you, where I'm working on a project and I need to be able to add like 25 things to my cart for my project and order it. And so in this case, when we did it, and I think this, I'm not sure which site this was on, in the screenshot that shitty coolers, it increased revenue per visitor by 15.5%, 85% confidence. That's okay. But that's one where this thing could really assist you or not, right? You got to test it. Ooh, how about breadcrumbs? That's another one I'd love to just get rid of if I can. And everyone I did that for, I owe an apology to, because you definitely want to keep the breadcrumbs, at least on the product page. On the collection or category page, it was less important, especially in Shopify, which kind of forces you into like this very flat collection structure. They're not a big fan of subcategories. But the product detail page, that breadcrumb, that's an integral part of how people shop, because they want to go back and forth between the product and the collection. And like right up in the upper left, we've got this breadcrumb, tells us what the collection was, gives me a link directly back to it. It's a really positive thing. It makes shopping on the site easier. And so for that one, I'm going to go with best practice, is you want breadcrumbs on your product detail page. Of course, you could test it yourself. This is one I ran just last month. There was that Glossier site. Glossier moved back to Shopify, and they had this really wild, potentially over-designed site that like e-com Twitter lost their minds for. They're like, what is, everybody had an opinion about it. And on that site, in the top right corner, it just said bag. There was no, that was your cart. It's 3 little words of bag and like size, 4 font. And it didn't have an icon on it. It wasn't in a different color. It was tiny. And I happened to be working with an apparel client at the time who had the exact same setup, coincidentally. It just said bag. I said, man, what if we add a cart icon to that? Like, what's the thing we want them to do? That's a critical step of the process, is they need to open the cart. And so we added straight up a bag emoji, like just use the Unicode. So if they're on an iPhone, they got a recognizable bag emoji. If they're on Android, they got whatever that phone used. And we ran the split test, and it was hugely outsized, 24% lift effect when we added that. And it's colorful, it's localized to their device. And so it's not surprising it won. It's surprising by how much it won by. So that's where I went and like, I got, figured it out, did the calculation. This one is in fact 95% confident. Like I did the work. My stats professor from college would have been proud of me. Some tips. Question everything. Just because it's on the site and it's like, you'll ask some, the client like, hey, why do you do it that way? Like why do we have that there? Can we do something about that? And they're like, oh, it's always been like that. The owner likes it. The owner's dog said it's great. Oh, we have this competitor and like, we think they're really successful, so they must know what they're doing. That's how they do it. So we have to do it that way. Until you have tested it yourself, you have no idea. You really don't. You have a best guess. You have a suspicion. But if you test it, you could confirm it, right? Does this actually matter? Or how much does it matter, right? Maybe it matters, but not like we thought. And that there is so much freedom in having that knowledge. The other thing I've learned and discovered is the e-commerce as a business is a pretty simple formula. Traffic times conversion times average order value. That will tell you your revenue over whatever period. It's great. It's simple algebra. And unfortunately, of that 3-factor equation, people overemphasize conversion rate, when the reality is the number one factor that affects conversion rate is quality of traffic. And so I would much rather look at average order value as a way to drive revenue. In my position, in my work, I cannot affect the quality of traffic. I cannot change the traffic. That is up to some marketing agency who is probably smarter than me. The conversion rate, that's tough. There's so many external factors, right? What was this person doing? Where did they come from? What's the consumer confidence? How's the stock market at this time? If you work with luxury brands, with luxury brands, you could take their revenue or conversion over time and graph it along with the performance of the Dow Jones, and they'll line up. We worked with a brand that sold unnecessarily expensive linens, and that one worked every time. It was funny. It's like, oh, market had a bad day, their conversion will be down today. And so I love average order value because there I have control, and there I have outsized impact and effect on what the business does. So for every conversion, if I got that average order value to go up 5%, revenue went up 5%. It's direct. And so, and split testing can help you get there, and you can use split testing to figure out the right offers, cross sells, upsells, the placement of those things, bundles, all that good stuff. And then lastly, I would like to reiterate here, consider segmentation. If you're just looking at all traffic lumped together, you are probably doing yourself a disservice. Whether you're just like poking around in Google Analytics, or setting up a split test, segment it by device, segment it by new versus returning, segment it by traffic source, and see how much clearer a picture that can paint for you. Let's see what we got here. Oh my gosh. My last slide, call to action. I have a newsletter, kurtelster.com, all kinds of good stuff. I send it once a week. I swear it's not annoying.
I can vouch for that. It's not annoying. It's fun. I like getting his newsletters. Awesome. Thank you so much. That was great. I know I have a few questions, but those of you who are here, if you have questions, feel free to put them into the chat or in the QA, and we'll make sure to get Kurt to answer them. Now's your chance to ask him anything you want. So you had talked about just trying things and testing it and seeing what works. But one of the things that I hear often, because I tend to work with smaller stores than what you do, is they don't have enough traffic. So how do you approach that A/B testing when you don't have enough traffic, or what is that right amount of traffic to be able to test it?
So when you're in that situation, you just have to limit what you're doing a little bit. And so you go, all right, we're only going to run one test at a time. Like one single thing is what we're going to test. And our test is going to be a big change. When I have, like, people often, The classic example of a split test is split testing button colors, or like split testing microcopy, add to cart versus buy now. Those tests, they're too little, they're too subtle. You want like a really huge, impactful change that's very obvious and very different. When you do that, then that will help you work around that lack of traffic. And you let the test run longer, and you try and run it toward like it can't be like, oh, it's only on this one product. Like it's not going to work. It needs to be something that's global and big and targeted at everybody, or it's like, or, just target mobile, which is the majority of the traffic anyway. That's one way around it. If that doesn't work, the totally non-scientific, but still useful and somewhat gratifying way to go about it is like compare week over week changes. But I wouldn't, doing it 1 week is too tough. Do 2 weeks, mainly because that way you ensure that like you're including pay periods in there. That can make a big difference.
Oh, yeah.
If my bank account just got topped up, then it makes it easier to buy, splurge on like a PlayStation 5 or whatever. That was my last big purchase. Came top of mind. Yeah, that's the way to go about it. Or like split test the stuff that is in your control. Maybe that's like different pop-ups and offers on the site, see what converts best, emails, ads. Split testing is not limited to the website. Lots of things support split testing now.
Definitely. Talking about payroll, I'm thinking too, it also probably depends on your audience. So if you typically sell to people that maybe get a paycheck once a month, then that might change when you would do those things too. So definitely keep that in mind. That's a really good point. And I wanted to comment too, because I loved your point earlier about how conversion rate really isn't, I'm interpreting, but like really isn't the measurement that most people should be focusing on, but it's the one that they do. And I love that because I deal with traffic all the time. And it's like, I could get 1 million people to my site, but if it's crappy quality, it doesn't really matter. My conversion's going to suck. So that's not helpful. But I just really wanted to kind of like highlight that, because I think that's a really good point that I want to make sure people hear.
We had a store who reached out. We'd built their store a year ago, and they were like, hey, our conversions are down. Can you take a look at the site? And I looked, and like their traffic is up, their revenue is up, their average order value is the same, but conversions are down. And long story short, once we were able to dive into it, they had done a fabulous job of blogging. They had been consistently blogging. And so they were bringing in all this new top of funnel traffic, this like outsized amount of top of funnel traffic. And so that skewed the conversion rate number. And so the conversion rate was lower. It was, but they were making more money than ever. But they were like so focused on this conversion rate, they couldn't see that.
Oh, I love that example, because usually when you think of that, it's usually ads focused. People put a bunch of money into ads, and so they get a whole bunch of traffic from their ads, especially on mobile, because that's when everyone's dilly-dallying on Facebook, and that's how they get their stuff. And that's usually where you see that conversion rate drop, is because they put a bunch of money in ads. But I love your example of a blog post, because that's organic. That's something that you work towards, and that's probably over a period of time. They're just naturally increasing their traffic and didn't even realize that it was adjusting. So that's cool.
It happened slow, and they were like, and then they graphed it over time, and they're like, oh my gosh, it goes down over time. Like they're really panicked.
That's really funny. Orion asked, how much is too much? The number of tests, variations, etc.
I'm running tests on a store now, and they'll do 1 million a week, just week after week, just incredible revenue. Even for them, running 1 million a week, that's nutty. 5 tests at a time, if it's, that aren't global, they're limited to like a category page, a product page. Even there, that will end up it'll create a scenario where like a test has to run for a month before you get to significance. And so I'd really try to limit yourself. Like that was one of the early things I had to learn, is like, oh, I'm going to run 3 tests. All right, well, none of my tests are getting enough traffic. Like ideally, until you're in the huge sites, just do one, like just run them sequentially.
How do you take into account the cyclical, ebbs and flows of sales, where like if you can't really test something when it's meant to be, in my opinion, you can't really test something when it's meant to be a high traffic. If you have a lot of sales that are coming in, if you're expecting a Black Friday sale, it's harder to test that and have something significant if you're looking at it in January and everything dropped again. So do you take that into account as well?
It's something you have to think about, but once you're like, oh yeah, we're considering this, take it with a grain of salt. When you get into those scenarios, suddenly you're just like talking yourself into the results you wanted to see.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a great way around it beyond like, these are the risks, like here's where we probably, could have skewed things or gone wrong. Revisiting the tests, being like, like, hey, we ran this test, this is the result we had, we're out of our other interesting tests. Let's just go back and rerun those, the ones from January. And you're right, because things change and things outside of your control change. Imagine like trying to run an e-commerce store in April 2020. Like those tests would not apply to now.
No.
Very different time.
Yeah, that's exactly where my mind was going to, where it was like, you can't really look at it when the economy is shifting as much as it has in the last 3 years. It's really difficult to have 100% certainty. And so I guess what I would then interpret is that sometimes you just have to have a gut reaction. You say, you know what, this worked or it didn't work, and you just move on past it too, and just stop dwelling on the things that maybe are so minor that it's not really worth it.
Yeah. I think that's like a lot of the freedom of it is you like oftentimes we'll find like we'll run this test and it'll come back and it'll be like completely like not significant, and it's like, well, this one got 49 and this one's like 51% probability to be the best, and you're like, all right, it doesn't matter, nobody cares, is what we just learned here.
Yeah, like with the free shipping, it's so close, maybe it's not a big deal. Like just pick something and go with it. Yeah. Someone just asked, when I run split test on a low traffic site, what KPIs should I focus on in this case?
That's the other thing, I didn't touch on, but when I got into split testing, what I learned is like, just rarely would you only be testing with conversion rate as your KPI. Like in Google Optimize, because it's plugged into Google Analytics, RIP. But you could choose 3 goals. And so you could see like, all right, for this, I'm going to use page views per session. I'm going to use transactions, which is what they call conversion. And we're going to do revenue. Revenue is my favorite. Revenue combines average order value and conversion rate into one. So like, I'm just going to pick one. I default to revenue for that reason. But, generally the goal, you should be looking at like whatever the next step in the funnel is. So if I'm on a collection page, viewed product or add to cart. If I'm on a product page, add to cart or reach checkout, like 1 to 2 steps ahead is really what that would be the safe and correct answer.
Yeah.
But you can use like bounce rate, time on site. I mean, there's all kinds of metrics to go at, and you don't have to run just one. You could pick, most platforms are going to let you do multiple.
Yeah, I definitely think, when you say bounce rate too, it kind of makes me think that it depends on what your goal is, and whatever you're measuring, what's the purpose that you're measuring it for. So if I'm looking to get more engagement on a site, then bounce rate would be a bigger concern for me that I'd want to focus on. Maybe not necessarily did they purchase or not, but are they interacting with the site as much as I want, or how long do they interact? Those questions. So I think that kind of makes me think about more of, and when you're testing it, what's the point? Go ahead.
If I'm trying to test with my goals conversions and I'm on a site that converts really well, that's 2%. So like realistically, my data source, my sample is 2% of the total traffic. And that doesn't help me much, versus those user engagement metrics will include everybody who looked at, into the qualifying test. And that like suddenly life becomes much easier when you use those engagement metrics.
Yeah.
You do time on site too is another one.
Mm-hmm. Although I don't think it's available anymore. Is it available on GA4? I don't know.
I never use that one. I like bounce, page views. If I'm doing a user engagement metric, it's usually page views. Because for me, it's like how committed to shopping were you? Like you really explored this site. All right. Even if you didn't buy, you raised your hand as like, you're interested and we should be investing in remarketing to you.
Yeah. Cause like that goes back to what you were saying before too, about when someone's on mobile and they're, paying attention to the TV, or they have their, kids in the background or whatever, maybe they're not as focused. And so that maybe isn't the right time for you to be worrying about how engaged were they on your website, because they probably have a million other things going on. And so I think that's another thing that you would have to consider too, is the type of device that they're on and time of day or whatever too, if you wanted to get into the specifics, but maybe that's too minute. I don't know. On the hero image for collection or the category pages, did you test or have you had any test around the collection description?
Oh. I don't think it was anything specific to the description. It was either like, the image plus the description went away, or they just had only the image and then that went away.
Oh yeah, because in many Shopify stores, the description is on top of the image too.
Yeah, it'll either, it'll be,
yeah,
you're right. It'll be like collection. Yeah, it's a background image.
yeah.
And then it'll be like collection title, collection description.
Maybe that's something you'll have to test and tell me how it goes.
Have to mess with it. My experience with it is like all of it is just garbage for people to scroll past. Like
Well,
you
and
just
that's the
perform
problem.
better.
Yeah,
Show them the product.
yeah.
Oh,
I
we
think
want them
that's
to
the
buy more
issue.
stuff. Okay,
'Cause I
show it
think
to
really the problem is that people put, like you said, they put junk in the description, but if it's an actual like meaningful description that's actually going to help to articulate what's in this collection, then there's value to it. Many people, I think, create the collection as a way to help rank their collection page, or they create the collection description as a way to help rank their page. So the more
That's
content on your page,
almost always.
that's really the purpose of it. And so there's been a lot of debate around, or at least in my circle, around like, do you put the collection description on the top or at the bottom of the page? And then if it's at the bottom, it's 100% for SEO. No one's going to scroll down there and go read it. So it's just funny.
We see that one, or we'll see like split description where they have
Yeah.
like a short one. The human one's at the top and the machine one's at the bottom.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I've got just one more question that I wanted to ask, but I would love to hear what others have. Actually, let's ask this one really quick. Ahmed is saying, any other resource like Baymar that you use to come up with new test ideas for your clients?
Yes. And I absolutely do not remember the name of it at the moment. Oh, geez.
If you could think of it, let me know. We could put it in the recap too.
Yeah, there's one it's a subscription, and they give you like, it's a community and people submit their own tests and test results. And then they have a free newsletter where they'll be like, hey, here's like tests that they'll notice and catalog tests that major retailers run. So it's like Etsy's trying this, Amazon's trying this.
Oh, that's cool.
And then like months, and when those guys run tests, even on those huge sites, they'll let their tests run for like a month minimum. And then you like, once the test goes away, then you watch to see what change did they make. And then as you can kind of infer like, oh, this must have been the winner.
Oh, how funny.
And now I have to find what the
Yeah, tell
heck
me when you
site
find
that
it.
was.
Let me know and I'll add it to the recap email. I feel like there was one that I saw a long time ago, like CX something. I can't remember now.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through my email. I cannot find this thing for the life of me. Oh, that's frustrating.
For the machine copy on category pages, couldn't you just make it white and hide in dead space? No, don't do that. If I understand your question, this is Orion that's asking the question. If I understand what you're saying is, let's say you have a background of a white, your background is white, and then you have text that is also white, just to kind of get it from the machine to be able to see it. That's keyword stuffing basically, and Google would get you, like, you'd be very in trouble with Google. So please don't do that. It would not be very fun, I promise.
No, just go full black hat.
Don't do that. Don't listen to Kurt now.
That's bad advice. Don't
That's
do
bad
that.
advice. Okay, so my last question was, I know that there's been a lot of talk around Google Optimize going away. Have you played around with Microsoft Clarity yet? And is that comparable?
I love Microsoft Clarity. Unfortunately, it doesn't do split testing. It is my deep hope that it will support split testing. I used to be all in on Hotjar, and then Hotjar was sold to, I believe, a portfolio company. And then like prices go up with no additional features, and like they really limited the free trials. And so I was frustrated with Hotjar. And so when Microsoft showed up with Clarity and said, hey, it's free, I'll give it a try. And then I did. Oh my gosh, it does everything Hotjar did and better. And so that's another solution. Like if you're not sure how to improve a site, and you're not comfortable with split testing, you don't have the traffic, install Microsoft Clarity for free, and then let it run screen recordings on the site and then open up the screen recordings and it'll let you filter by rage clicks. That's where someone gets mad and they're like, and they click like 10 times because they're mad and frustrated. And so it'll show you playing back at 1.5x speed. It skips the inactivity. And so in 30 minutes, you can watch like, you know, a couple hours worth of people angrily using your website. And you'll find the patterns very quickly where it's like, oh, this is consistently the thing that they don't understand or is annoying.
It's also really funny to watch yourself interact with it. Like when you're like watching the people interact with your website, you're like, the button's right there. Why can't you just click? It's right there, like right there. And you get really heated when people can't see it. But I agree with Kurt. It's like eye-opening to be like, okay, apparently the button isn't as clear as you think it is. Maybe you need to make it more obvious for people to click on. But I don't know why I thought Microsoft Clarity was an alternative to Google Optimize, but I didn't realize it was a Hotjar alternative. So is there another tool that you have been playing with that maybe folks should explore?
IntelliGems, which is that Shopify app I'd used for the shipping split test, they're adding a whole bunch of Shopify specific split testing. It's like a Shopify specific split testing suite is what it's turning into. And so that's a really easy option to check out. And then like the usual suspects would be Visual Website Optimizer, VWO, and Optimizely. But the turnoff to those for me was they're very enterprise focused, not just not as friendly and accessible as Optimize was, because it was like half the work was done. It was already plugged into Google Analytics.
That's true. Yeah, that would make sense. Wonderful. I think that's all the questions that I have. Kurt, can you pop up your contact again really quickly so that folks can remember how to reach out to you if they want?
Oh my gosh.
Or
course.
I could just do, what is it, kurtelster.com?
Yeah, throw it in the chat.
So feel free to reach out to Kurt if y'all have questions. I'm like volunteering that. I'm assuming that's what you want.
Well, it's my newsletter. Sign up for it and then just reply to it. It goes to me. That's my real email, I swear.
Yeah, he's very responsive to it. So definitely check it out. Well, thank you so much, Kurt, for being here. This has been fun. I hope y'all took something away from this and that you're going to go try out a few things on your website to see what sticks or maybe what doesn't. But I want to thank everyone for joining us as well. But thanks so much for being here, Kurt. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yay. All right. Take care, everyone.